For most people on Earth, the night looked completely normal. Heavy rain crashed against the dark waters of the Pacific Ocean. Lightning flashed across the clouds. Cargo ships moved slowly through the storm, while pilots inside nearby aircraft complained about the terrible weather. Nobody knew something impossible was falling toward Earth. Far above the planet, hidden behind thick storm clouds, a burning object screamed through the atmosphere. It moved too fast. Military satellites detected it for only a few seconds before every system suddenly failed. Inside a secret space monitoring station in Alaska, warning alarms exploded across computer screens. Officers rushed around the room in panic. "No known aircraft matches the object," one operator said nervously. Another officer stared at the radar screen with wide eyes. "It disappeared," he whispered. The object vanished above the Pacific Ocean, then everything became silent again. 3 days later, near the freezing waters of Alaska, a small fishing boat struggled against strong waves. Old Captain Harris stood near the edge of the deck while his crew pulled heavy fishing nets from the ocean. The storm from earlier that week had damaged several boats already. Nobody wanted to stay at sea longer than necessary. Then one of the younger fishermen noticed something floating in the distance. At first, it looked like broken metal, but as the boat moved closer, the crew realized it was something far stranger. A black metal pod floated silently on the water. Strange blue lights flickered across its surface. The object had no windows, no engine, no markings from any country on Earth. Captain Harris felt cold fear crawl through his body. "What is that thing?" one crew member whispered. The metal pod suddenly opened with a loud hiss. Everyone stepped back in shock. Inside the pod was a creature. It looked almost human, but its skin was pale gray. Its eyes were larger than normal, and strange silver lines moved across its neck like glowing veins. The creature was injured badly. Dark blood covered its body. The fishermen froze in terror. Nobody spoke. Then the creature slowly opened its eyes. It looked directly at Captain Harris, and in perfect English, it whispered, "They are coming," before anyone could react. The creature collapsed unconscious within hours. Military helicopters surrounded the fishing boat. Armed soldiers stormed onto the deck. The fishermen were forced to stay silent while the strange creature and the broken pod were taken away. The world never heard about the event. Governments buried the truth immediately. Deep below a military base hidden inside the mountains of Nevada, scientists and soldiers gathered around thick glass walls. Behind the glass, the alien creature rested inside a medical chamber. Doctors worked carefully while armed guards watched every movement. General Victor Halley stood silently near the observation window. "What exactly are we dealing with?" he asked. Dr. Emily Carter adjusted her glasses nervously. "We don't know yet," she answered. "But this creature is definitely not human." The room became silent for the first time in human history. Earth was no longer alone. Hours later, the creature finally woke up. Red warning lights flashed immediately across the room. Soldiers raised their weapons. The alien looked around slowly, confused and frightened. Dr. Carter carefully entered the chamber alone. The soldiers protested immediately. "It could kill you," one guard warned. But she ignored them. The alien stared at her quietly. Then it spoke again in calm English. "My name is Cale," it said weakly. Dr. Carter could barely breathe. "How do you know our language?" she asked. Cale looked down at the floor. "We studied your world for many years," he answered. General Halley stepped closer to the glass. "Why are you here?" he demanded. Cale remained silent for several seconds. Then fear slowly appeared across his face. "My people are called the Illyrians," he explained. "We explored peaceful worlds across the galaxy," he paused. "But we were attacked." Large digital screens inside the room suddenly displayed images recovered from Cale's damaged escape pod. Massive black warships filled the screen. Entire planets burned beneath enormous explosions. Even the soldiers looked horrified. The Zarek Dominion, Kale whispered. They destroy civilizations. Dr. Carter stared at the terrifying images. Why come to Earth? She asked quietly. Kale looked directly at her. Because they followed me. The entire room fell silent. General Halley immediately ordered every military defense system on Earth to maximum alert. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in deep space, darkness covered an enormous alien fleet. The ships were gigantic, cold, and completely silent. Inside the lead warship, a massive armored alien stood before a glowing star map. One smaller officer approached carefully. "We have located the Illyrian survivor," the officer said. The armored figure slowly turned toward Earth's location on the map. Its glowing red eyes narrowed, then it gave a single command. "Prepare the invasion," across the endless darkness of space. Thousands of warships suddenly changed direction. Their destination was Earth, for the first time in human history. Earth was preparing for a war nobody truly understood. Inside the underground military base in Nevada, fear spread through every hallway. Scientists worked day and night around Kale's damaged escape pod. Military officers argued constantly. World leaders demanded answers, but nobody had a real plan. The alien known as Kale remained under heavy security inside a protected research chamber. Even though he looked calm, Dr. Emily Carter noticed the fear in his eyes growing stronger every day. He knew something terrible was coming. Late one night, alarms suddenly exploded across the research floor. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. Technicians rushed toward their computer screens in panic. "We're detecting a transmission," one scientist shouted. General Victor Hawley entered the control room immediately. "Where is it coming from?" he demanded. The scientist pointed toward Kale's damaged pod. "It's sending signals into deep space." Kale's face instantly turned pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. Dr. Carter looked at him carefully. "What does it mean?" she asked. Kale slowly stood from his chair. "The Zarek are searching for me," he answered. "If the pod is transmitting, they can follow it directly to Earth." The room became silent. General Hawley immediately ordered technicians to shut the signal down. But every attempt failed. The damaged alien technology seemed alive. The signal continued pulsing deep into space like a beacon. Then another scientist called out nervously, "Sir, we found something else." Large satellite images appeared across the main screen. The pictures showed Antarctica. Strange energy waves were spreading beneath the ice. General Hawley frowned. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Dr. Carter zoomed closer, deep below the frozen surface. Enormous geometric structures appeared hidden under miles of ice. Perfect shapes, perfect lines, impossible to be natural. Kale stared at the screen with horror. "No," he whispered softly. Dr. Carter looked at him. "You know what this is," she said. Kale stepped backward slowly. "We need to leave this planet," he answered. Hours later, a military transport aircraft flew through violent snowstorms above Antarctica. Inside the aircraft, armed soldiers checked their weapons while scientists studied the strange underground images. Kale sat quietly beside Dr. Carter. The closer they moved toward Antarctica, the more nervous he became. Finally, the aircraft landed beside a remote research station buried in snow. Freezing winds screamed across the ice. Visibility was terrible. A team of scientists guided them toward a massive drilling site nearby. One researcher spoke quickly while leading the group underground. "We discovered the structure 2 days ago," he explained. "At first we thought it was some ancient human ruin." He paused nervously. "But it's far older than humanity, deep below the ice." Massive steel doors slowly opened. Everyone froze in shock. An enormous black structure rested inside the frozen cavern. The walls were covered with glowing blue symbols. The metal looked untouched by time. It was ancient, but still active. Several soldiers aimed flashlights toward the strange symbols. Kale suddenly grabbed Dr. Carter's arm. "We should not be here," he whispered fearfully, before she could answer. One of the scientists accidentally touched part of the wall. Instantly, the entire structure came alive. Blue energy exploded across the chamber. The ground began shaking violently. Warning alarms screamed through the underground tunnels. Then a deep mechanical sound echoed through the darkness. Like something enormous waking from sleep, soldiers panicked immediately. "What was that?" one shouted. Nobody answered. Cale stared at the glowing walls in absolute terror. Dr. Carter looked directly at him. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. Cale remained silent for several seconds. Then he finally spoke. "This place is not a building," he said quietly. Everyone turned toward him. "It is a prison." The room became completely silent. General Hale stepped forward slowly. "A prison for what?" he asked. Cale's voice trembled. "Long ago, before human civilization existed, an ancient species fought a terrible war," he explained. "They created biological weapons powerful enough to destroy entire star systems." He pointed toward the glowing structure. "One of those weapons was sealed here beneath Earth." Several soldiers exchanged nervous looks. Dr. Carter shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. Cale looked directly at her. "The Zarok are not invading Earth because of me," he said. "They came for what is hidden below your planet." Suddenly, the lights inside the chamber shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the underground ruins. Then a massive impact shook the ice benia. The truth about aliens could no longer stay hidden. Only hours after the disaster in Antarctica, strange lights appeared across the skies of Earth. People in cities around the world stopped in fear as enormous objects moved silently above the clouds. Phones recorded everything. News channels panicked. Governments lost control of the situation. For the first time in history, humanity saw alien warships with their own eyes. Inside the underground military base in Nevada, emergency alarms echoed through every hallway. Large screens showed terrifying images from orbit. More than 50 black warships had entered Earth's atmosphere. Each ship was larger than an aircraft carrier. General Victor Hale stared at the screen with cold disbelief. "That's only a scouting fleet," Cale warned quietly. The room turned silent. Dr. Emily Carter looked at him. "You mean there are more coming?" she asked. Cale lowered his head slowly. "Thousands more." Panic spread through world governments immediately. Missile defense systems activated across the planet. Fighter jets launched from military bases. Warships moved across the oceans. Humanity was preparing for war, but deep inside, everyone knew the terrible truth. Earth was not ready above the Pacific Ocean. The first battle began. Dozens of human fighter jets rushed toward the alien ships at maximum speed. Pilots heard heavy breathing through their radios, while warning sirens screamed inside the cockpits. Captain Marcus Reed led the formation from the front. He had spent 15 years flying combat missions, but nothing prepared him for what he saw ahead. The Zarok ships floated silently above the clouds like giant black mountains. No visible weapons, no engines, no sound, just darkness. "Target locked," one pilot reported nervously. General Hale's voice came through the radio. "Fire everything." Missiles exploded across the sky. Hundreds of rockets rushed toward the alien fleet. For one brief second, humanity believed it worked. Then blue energy shields appeared around the alien ships. Every missile exploded harmlessly against the shields. The Zarok fleet did not even move. Captain Reed felt fear crawl through his body. Then the alien ships attacked. Bright red beams cut through the sky instantly. Human fighter jets exploded one after another. Pilots barely had time to scream. Within seconds, the clouds filled with burning debris. Back inside the military base, silence covered the control room. Nobody could believe what they were watching. Entire human squadrons disappeared in less than a minute. Dr. Carter looked horrified. "We can't stop them," she whispered. Cale said nothing. He already knew, above the Pacific. Captain Reed's damaged fighter spun through thick smoke. Warning alarms flashed everywhere inside the cockpit. One engine was destroyed. Fuel was leaking. Half his controls were dead, but somehow he was still alive. Retreat immediately, military command ordered, but Reed noticed something strange. One of the Xerok ships had lowered closer to the ocean. Its shield flickered for only a second. An idea suddenly entered his mind. It was reckless, possibly suicidal. Completely insane, but it was the only chance left. Reed gripped the controls tightly, instead of escaping. He turned directly toward the alien ship. "What are you doing?" another pilot shouted. Reed ignored him. His fighter accelerated straight toward the massive warship. The Xerok vessel fired repeatedly. Red beams barely missed his aircraft, inside the cockpit. Every warning system screamed. Then Reed saw it. A small opening beneath the alien ship where the shield weakened during weapon fire. He smiled nervously. "Let's see if aliens can handle human stupidity," he muttered. At the last second, Reed launched his remaining missiles directly into the opening. The explosion struck deep inside the alien ship, for the first time during the battle. Something unbelievable happened. The Xerok warship lost power. Blue energy flickered violently across its surface. Then the massive vessel began falling from the sky. Human pilots stared in disbelief. The alien ship crashed into the Pacific Ocean with a gigantic explosion. Inside the underground base, shocked silence filled the control room. General Hale slowly stood from his chair. "Did we just destroy one?" he whispered. Cale looked equally stunned. "That should not have been possible," he admitted, but the battle was far from over. The remaining Xerok ships immediately pulled back into higher orbit. For several minutes they simply watched Earth silently, as if studying humanity carefully for the first time. Then one final transmission appeared across every military communication system on Earth. The message was translated automatically through Cale's technology. A deep alien voice echoed across command centers around the world. "Species identified," the voice said coldly. "Humans are aggressive, unstable, and highly resistant." The message paused briefly, then the final words came. "Humanity must be exterminated immediately, suddenly." Satellite systems detected something terrifying beyond the moon. Thousands of new signals appeared in deep space. An enormous Xerok invasion fleet was entering the solar system. And this time, they were bringing everything. The world changed after humanity destroyed its first alien warship. People celebrated the victory at first. News channels called Captain Marcus Reed a hero. Governments promised Earth could fight back. But inside military command centers, nobody celebrated for long. Because the real invasion had not started yet. Beyond the moon, thousands of Xerok warships continued moving toward Earth. Their fleet was so massive that satellites could barely count them. Meanwhile, deep beneath Antarctica, the ancient prison continued waking up. Massive earthquakes spread across the planet. Cities shook violently. Entire coastlines flooded after powerful tsunamis struck without warning. Scientists could not explain what was happening. But Cale knew something beneath Earth was becoming active. Inside the frozen underground facility in Antarctica, emergency lights flashed through collapsing tunnels. Dr. Emily Carter and her team moved carefully through the ancient ruins, while soldiers guarded every hallway. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the prison became. The walls no longer looked mechanical, they looked alive. Dark veins moved slowly beneath the black surface, like blood flowing through skin. Several soldiers became nervous immediately. "This place feels wrong," one whispered. Nobody disagreed. At the center of the prison, the team discovered an enormous circular chamber. Thousands of glowing alien symbols covered the walls. And in the middle of the room stood a gigantic frozen object, hidden beneath thick ice. It was too large to fully see, Only part of its shape was visible. A massive claw, dark armored skin, and something that looked disturbingly organic. Dr. Carter stepped closer carefully. "What exactly is this thing?" she asked. Cale looked terrified. "In ancient galactic history, it was called the Hollow One," he answered quietly. The soldiers exchanged confused looks. Cale continued speaking slowly. "It was not born naturally. It was created during a war millions of years ago." He pointed toward the frozen creature. "The ancient species that built this prison designed it to destroy civilizations." General Hala crossed his arms. "You're telling me there's a galaxy-killing monster sleeping under Antarctica?" he said angrily. Cale nodded once, "And the Xeric want to control it." Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered violently. A low growl echoed through the prison walls. The sound was so deep it shook the ice itself. Several soldiers raised their weapons immediately. Then one scientist screamed. Everyone turned in panic. A researcher near the wall had collapsed onto the floor. Blood poured from his nose while he grabbed his head in pain. "It's inside my mind," he cried desperately. More scientists suddenly dropped to their knees. Whispers filled the chamber. Soft voices, strange voices, ancient voices. Dr. Carter felt pressure building inside her skull. The whispers were not coming from speakers. They were coming from the creature beneath the ice. Cale stepped backward in horror. "The prison is weakening," he whispered, without warning. Giant cracks exploded across the frozen floor. The entire chamber shook violently. Chunks of ice crashed from the ceiling while warning sirens screamed throughout the facility. "Everyone move," General Hale shouted. Soldiers rushed toward the exits, but before they escaped, something massive moved beneath the ice. A gigantic shadow slowly rose upward from the darkness below. Then two enormous glowing eyes opened. The room instantly became silent. Even the alarms stopped working. The eyes stared directly at the humans. Watching them, studying them, Dr. Carter could barely breathe. The creature was alive, and it was awake. Suddenly, every electronic system inside the prison shut down completely. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Then the whispers returned louder than before. This time everyone heard the same words inside their minds. "Who has awakened me?" Several soldiers panicked and opened fire into the ice. Bullets shattered harmlessly against the frozen surface. The glowing eyes narrowed slowly. Then one soldier was suddenly lifted into the air by an invisible force. The entire team froze in terror. The soldier screamed helplessly before being thrown violently across the chamber wall. Bones cracked instantly. Cale shouted desperately, "Stop attacking it!" But fear had already taken control. More soldiers fired their weapons. The creature beneath the ice released a horrifying roar that shook the entire prison. Then the ice began breaking apart completely. Massive black claws burst through the frozen surface. The chamber collapsed into chaos. Dr. Carter fell to the ground as enormous cracks spread beneath her feet. General Hale grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the exit. "Run!" Darkness covered the skies of Earth. The Zarok invasion fleet blocked sunlight above entire cities. Thousands of giant warships floated silently over the planet. People everywhere stared upward in fear. Then the attacks began. Massive red energy beams rained down from orbit. Military bases disappeared in seconds. Entire buildings exploded into fire. Humanity had entered its first alien war inside cities around the world. Panic spread rapidly. Roads became crowded. Emergency sirens screamed endlessly. News channels stopped broadcasting one after another. But even as fear consumed the planet, humans did something the Xeric did not expect. They refused to surrender. Inside the underground military command center in Nevada, General Victor Hale watched reports arrive from across the world. Losses were catastrophic. Entire air forces had been destroyed. Communication satellites were gone. Several governments had already collapsed. Yet human resistance continued growing stronger every hour. Dr. Emily Carter entered the control room quickly. "The creature escaped Antarctica," she reported. General Halley looked exhausted. "The hollow one," he said quietly. Cale nodded from across the room. "It is moving north," he warned. "And the Xeric are following it." Before anyone could answer, another officer rushed inside. "Sir, civilians are fighting back," he said in disbelief. Large screens showed live footage from different countries. In America, construction workers used heavy mining machines against alien ground forces. In Europe, civilians built homemade explosives inside destroyed cities. In Asia, damaged factories were transformed into weapon workshops overnight. Everywhere the Xeric attacked, humans adapted. Cale stared at the screen silently. "No species behaves like this," he whispered. Dr. Carter looked at him. "What do you mean?" she asked. Cale pointed toward the footage. "Most civilizations surrender after seeing the Xeric fleet," he explained. "Humans become more dangerous." Far away in the ruined streets of Chicago, Captain Marcus Reed climbed from the wreckage of his crashed fighter jet. Smoke covered the city. Buildings burned around him. Alien drones searched the streets above. Reed wiped blood from his face and grabbed a damaged rifle from a dead soldier nearby. Suddenly, screams echoed from inside a nearby subway station. Without hesitation, Reed ran toward the sound. Inside the station, terrified civilians hid in darkness while small alien machines hunted them one by one. The drones moved quickly across the walls like metal insects. A young boy cried beside his injured mother while one drone approached slowly. Then gunfire exploded through the station. Captain Reed attacked the drones immediately. Bullets barely damaged the machines, but Reed kept fighting anyway. One drone jumped toward him violently. Reed grabbed a broken metal pipe and smashed the machine repeatedly until sparks exploded everywhere. The civilians stared at him in shock. "Move!" Reed shouted. "Get out while you still can." The survivors quickly escaped through underground tunnels. Meanwhile, across the planet, human resistance groups began forming everywhere. Police officers, farmers, truck drivers, engineers, former soldiers. People who had never touched weapons before now fought together for survival. The Xeric expected fear. Instead they found rage. Inside the Xeric command ship above Earth, the alien commander watched the growing resistance carefully. One officer approached nervously. "Human forces continue attacking despite overwhelming losses," the officer reported. The commander remained silent for several moments. Then he finally spoke. "Interesting. Back in Nevada, scientists studying captured alien technology made a sudden discovery. Human weapons could not penetrate Xeric energy shields directly, but the shields weakened briefly during heavy weapon fire. General Halley immediately formed a dangerous new strategy. Human pilots would attack in waves, forcing the alien ships to fire continuously, then strike during shield instability. The survival chance was almost zero still. Volunteers filled every military base within hours. Even retired pilots returned. One old pilot smiled while entering his aircraft. "If aliens want Earth," he laughed, "they can come fight for it." Hours later, the largest air battle in human history began above the Atlantic Ocean. Hundreds of human aircraft launched together toward the Xeric fleet. The sky filled with missiles, explosions, and burning debris. Alien warships destroyed human fighters by the dozens. But humanity refused to retreat again and again. Pilots attacked impossible targets. Finally, one Xeric cruiser lowered its shields for less than 2 seconds during heavy fire. That was enough. A squadron of old human bombers rushed forward at full speed. The alien ship exploded into flames moments later. Then another warship fell, and another, for the first time since arriving at Earth. The Xeric fleet began losing ships rapidly. Inside the alien command vessel, warning alarms echoed loudly. The commander stared at the battle in growing anger. "How are primitives doing this?" one officer asked fearfully. The commander answered coldly. They are willing to die. Suddenly, every screen inside the command ship changed. A giant black figure appeared walking through the ruins of Antarctica. The Hollow One, entire Zurich ground armies retreated before it. The creature looked toward the sky slowly, then something impossible happened. Thousands of human communication systems activated at once across the planet. A deep, ancient voice echoed into every radio, every military channel, every phone on Earth. The Hollow One was speaking directly to humanity, and its first words froze the entire planet in silence. Who leads the humans? Silence spread across Earth after the Hollow One spoke. Every radio station, every military frequency, every damaged phone on the planet repeated the same deep voice. Who leads the humans? People everywhere froze in fear. Inside the underground command center in Nevada, nobody moved. Even General Victor Hawley looked shaken. The Hollow One stood in the ruins of Antarctica like a dark mountain. Snowstorms moved violently around its gigantic body. Blue energy glowed across its armored skin. Its massive eyes stared directly toward the sky where the Zurich fleet waited. Dr. Emily Carter slowly stepped toward the communication system. Her hands trembled slightly, then she answered. There is no single leader of humanity, she said carefully. We are many nations for several seconds. The creature remained silent, then its ancient voice returned. Strange species. Cale stared at the screen nervously. The Hollow One should not be communicating peacefully, he whispered. It was created only for destruction. Suddenly, alarms exploded inside the control room. Satellite systems detected movement across the Zurich fleet. Thousands of alien ships began repositioning around Antarctica. They're preparing to attack the creature, one officer shouted. General Hawley looked toward Cale. Can they kill it? He asked. Cale answered honestly. I don't know. Far above Earth, the Zurich commander stood inside his dark throne chamber. Cold red lights covered the enormous room. One officer kneeled before him. The Hollow One is interacting with the humans, the officer reported nervously. The commander's glowing eyes narrowed immediately. That is impossible, he growled. He activated an ancient holographic recording hidden inside the ship's archives. The image showed a terrifying war from millions of years ago. Entire planets burned while giant biological creatures destroyed fleets across the stars. Then another image appeared. Humans, not modern humans, but ancient human ancestors. Dr. Carter watched the recovered files from Nevada with disbelief. These records are millions of years old, she whispered. Cale looked equally shocked. That cannot be real, the recording continued. An ancient alien empire known as the Architects appeared on screen. According to the files, the Architects created the Hollow Ones during a galactic war. But eventually, the creatures became uncontrollable. Entire civilizations disappeared before extinction. The Architects searched desperately for a species capable of controlling the monsters. And somehow, they chose humanity. General Hawley frowned. You're saying aliens changed human DNA? He asked. Cale slowly nodded. The Architects altered early humans millions of years ago, he explained. They wanted a species capable of surviving anything. The room became silent. Dr. Carter stared at the screen carefully. That's why humans adapt so quickly, she realized. That's why we survive impossible situations. Cale looked terrified. The Zurich know this secret, he said quietly. That is why they fear humanity, meanwhile. Across Earth, the war continued growing worse. Cities burned. Millions fled underground. Alien ground forces spread across entire continents. But human resistance only became stronger in Tokyo. Civilians turned subway tunnels into military bunkers. In Brazil, engineers used mining lasers against alien tanks. In Africa, entire villages trapped Zurich soldiers using homemade explosives. Humanity adapted faster every hour. The Zurich commander watched the reports with growing anger. These humans learn too quickly, one officer warned. The commander finally made a decision. Prepare the planet killer, he ordered coldly. Every officer inside the chamber froze. Even among the Zurek, the planet killer weapon was feared. It had destroyed entire worlds before, back in Antarctica. The Hollow One slowly walked across the frozen wasteland. Each step shattered the ice beneath it. Hundreds of Zurok attack ships surrounded the creature from the sky. Then they fired together. Massive red energy beams struck the Hollow One directly. Explosions covered Antarctica in fire for several seconds. Nobody could see anything through the smoke. Then the smoke moved. The Hollow Earth stood at the edge of extinction, above the planet. The gigantic Zerok planet killer continued charging near the moon. Dark energy surrounded the massive weapon like a black storm. Even from Earth's surface, people could see the terrifying glow in the sky. If the weapon fired, human civilization would disappear forever. Inside the underground command center in Nevada, fear filled the room. Scientists worked desperately across flashing control panels. Military officers shouted emergency orders. Satellite feeds showed alien fleets surrounding the planet from every direction. General Victor Halle looked toward Kale. You said the Hollow One obeys humans, he said. Can it destroy that weapon? Kale stared at the screen silently. Maybe, he answered, but if it fails, Earth dies. Far away in Antarctica, the Hollow One stood motionless across the frozen wasteland. Burning alien warships crashed around its enormous body. Blue energy moved across its dark armor like rivers of light. Then the creature looked upward toward the moon, and suddenly it moved. The ice beneath Antarctica exploded apart as the giant creature launched itself into the sky. Shockwaves spread across the continent. Snowstorms twisted violently behind it. Entire Zerok fleets opened fire immediately. Thousands of red energy beams struck the Hollow One during its ascent. But the creature kept climbing higher, for the first time in history. Humans watched an ancient monster leave Earth's atmosphere. Inside cities around the world, people stared upward in disbelief. Children, soldiers, families hiding underground. Everyone watched the sky. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Reed prepared for what would likely become humanity's final mission. Inside a damaged military hangar in Nevada, old bombers and stolen alien technology surrounded the runway. The plan was almost suicidal. While the Hollow One attacked the planet killer, human pilots would strike directly at the Zerok command ship. If the alien commander survived, the invasion would continue forever. General Halle approached Reed quietly. You still have time to walk away, he said. Reed smiled weakly. If Earth burns, there's nowhere left to walk nearby. Kale listened silently for several moments. He watched the human pilots preparing for battle. Some laughed nervously, some wrote final messages for their families. Others simply sat quietly beside their aircraft. Kale lowered his eyes slowly. No species fights like humans, he whispered. Then he made a decision. I'm going with them, he said. Dr. Emily Carter looked shocked. You'll die, she warned. Kale gave a small, sad smile. If humanity falls because of me, then I should stand with them at the end. Hours later, the final battle began. Hundreds of human aircraft launched into space alongside stolen Zerok fighters repaired by human engineers. Above Earth, chaos filled the stars. The Hollow One crashed directly into the Zerok planet killer near the moon. The impact shook space itself. Massive explosions lit the darkness while alien fleets surrounded the creature from every direction. The Hollow One tore through warships using its enormous claws. Blue energy beams ripped entire fleets apart. Burning debris filled orbit around Earth. But the Zerok numbers were endless meanwhile. Captain Reed's strike team flew directly toward the Zerok command ship. Enemy fighters attacked them immediately. Human pilots exploded one after another across the battlefield. Still they kept moving forward, inside the lead aircraft. Warning alarms screamed around Reed. "We're not going to make it," one pilot shouted through the radio. Then Cale's voice answered calmly, "Yes, you will, suddenly." Cale's stolen alien fighter accelerated ahead of the human fleet. He flew directly into the center of the Xerok defense line. Every enemy ship turned toward him. Dr. Carter watched the battle from Earth in horror. "He's drawing them away," she whispered. Cale's fighter weaved through explosions while dozens of alien ships chased him. Inside his cockpit, warning lights flashed everywhere. His engines were failing. Weapons were destroyed. Escape systems were offline, but Cale kept flying. One final transmission reached Earth from his ship. "This world gave me hope," he said softly. "Protect it." Then Cale turned his fighter directly toward the Xerok command ship. The alien commander's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," he growled, seconds later. Cale's fighter crashed into the center of the command vessel. A blinding explosion tore through the giant warship. The entire Xerok command ship broke apart in silence. Across space, enemy fleets suddenly lost coordination. Human forces attacked immediately, at the same moment. The Hollow One unleashed one final wave of blue energy into the planet killer weapon. The giant structure shattered beside the moon. The explosion lit the solar system like a second sun. The war was over. Days later, silence finally returned to Earth. Alien wreckage burned across the skies. Cities slowly began rebuilding. Survivors emerged from underground shelters. Humanity had survived inside a small memorial chamber in Nevada. Dr. Emily Carter stood beside Captain Reed quietly. On the wall appeared the image of Cale, the first alien to visit Earth, and the first alien willing to die for it, years later, across distant galaxies. Alien civilizations continued telling stories about humanity. Not with laughter, not with pride, but with fear. Because every species remembered what happened to the Xerok Dominion after attacking Earth. And they never forgot the final warning sent by the alien who never returned home. Stay away from humanity.